Molt bona nit, benvinguts a la conferència inaugural de la Barcelona Design Week, que aquest any celebra la seva 15ª edició. Bienvenidos, bienvenidas, welcome all to this 15th edition of Barcelona Design Week. This edition has been, of course, absolutely conditioned by the circumstances, obvious circumstances, and that is why this year is almost 100% digital, although there are some exhibitions here in the Design Hub Barcelona and also in some other scattered places in the city. We are streaming this opening right now, and there were more than 700 people who were meaning to connect right now from all over 35 countries. So we welcome everyone for being here. We're going to have this session in English then, so close, no matter how far. We're going to be holding, as I said, this event in English, pero queríamos dedicar también un cálido saludo a muchos espectadores que me consta que están ahora mismo conectados desde países desde América Latina. O sea que un saludo desde aquí. Y before we connect with what we've got to do with Paola Antonelli, who's listened to her carefully, she's going to make the opening conference today. But before that, there's a lot of people who are going to take the stage today. First of all, we've got here with us Luis López Barrena, who wants to welcome you all. He is the president of the Barcelona Design Center, and he's got a few words for us. So, Luis, if you want to come up, we're all ears. And after that, I'll take the word again. Luis, on the one.
Thank you very much, Ana. Bueno, buenas tardes, bienvenidos y gracias a todos por acompañarnos en la inauguración de la Barcelona Design Week en su 15ª edición. Good afternoon, and thank you very much for being with us in the opening session of the 15th Barcelona Design Week. When we started preparing this edition, we were just about to start a new decade for action towards the Sustainable Development Goals established by the United Nations to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure prosperity for all. Some months later, the world has changed dramatically, and design is now more needed than ever to improve our world. Design can act to tackle the different current challenges we are facing on health, economy, or sustainability. We are optimistic that in these complex moments, we need to boost design as a driver for innovation that generates impact. But we are not the only ones. I'm sure you all think the same, and so is the European Commission. Good design improves lives. It's the new claim for the proposal of a new European Bauhaus, with designers involved in co-creating solutions for a next-generation European Union. Design activism is the theme of this year, a call to action to the design community, because design weeks and festivals are not just events. They are powerful communities of brands, designers, artists, young talents, and emerging projects. And it is also a call for the mobilization of citizens and of economic agents to contribute through their actions to the recovery of the creative fabric and to its activity. We are proud to have Paola Antonelli as speaker of this opening session. Her platform, Design Emergency, is a perfect example on what design can do. Thank you, Paola, for being with us today in the opening of this very special edition. I would also like to thank to all participants who have registered to the more than 80 events of the program from more than 40 countries, and the design weeks and festivals which will take part on the activities from Melbourne, Querétaro, Puebla, Chile, Manchester, Madrid, and the Dutch Design Week. Some of them are members of the World Design Weeks Network, whose headquarters are now located here in Barcelona, at the Barcelona Design Center offices. Finally, thanks to all commercial and creative spaces around the city participating with their activities, and to all our sponsors, and to, logically and finally, to the Barcelona City Council for their continued support to the Barcelona Design Week. Thank you very much.
Moltes gràcies, Jordi. Thank you very much for your words. We're really looking forward to see how these 80 events develop along the week, this week that we are starting today in a very good company. I've got to say that after Luis, I said Jordi is coming next. After Luis, who is the president of the Barcelona Design Center, somebody else is going to take the stage now. In fact, what we're going to do is connect with him online, and he is the president of the Fostering Arts and Design, FAD. He's Jordi Montanya, and I think he's with us, or he should be connecting with us. Jordi, hello.
Hello.
Aquí el tenim. Jordi, endavant, quan vulguis. Go ahead.
Moltes gràcies, Anna. Gràcies, regidor Luis. Bona tarda a tothom. Buenas tardes a todos. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to share with you the satisfaction to be in the inauguration of this new edition of the Barcelona Design Week. To follow on the comments by Luis López de Barrena on the importance of design, I would like to read some recent statements by someone with very important European-wide responsibilities. She said the following: "This is our opportunity, excuse me, this is our opportunity to make change happen by design. We have everything we need to make this happen. We have shaken off the old excuses and home comforts that have always held us back. We have the vision, we have the plan, we have the investment. It's now time to get to work." These words were spoken by European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen on 15 September at the plenary session of the European Parliament. This is the meaning of the slogan of this year of Barcelona Design Week. And I tied in this call to action with the concept of restorative design coined by Paola Antonelli at the last Triennale di Milano, broken nature. We have overstated the limits and remain immersed in such a model that there is no longer an option, but to give us the possibilities to repair the damage caused and to respond to the emergencies. The emergency caused by the pandemic and the multiple emergencies that led the United Nations to declare the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And taking the opportunity that hundreds of you, designers from far and wide, are sitting on the other side of the screen, I want to encourage you to become part of this change. A new edition of Barcelona Design Week starts today.
Bé, sembla que la connexió està fallant una mica, se'ns ha congelat el Jordi. Crec que estava una mica concloent ja la seva intervenció. Si fa no fa, no sé, companys, si voleu intentar recuperar-la o voleu continuar endavant amb l'acte. Digueu-me què volem fer i si no, seguim endavant. Crec que el missatge del Jordi, and sorry, I'm talking in Catalan now because there's some kind of problems with the connection, and we're getting Jordi back again. So maybe we'll listen to him.
The value of design through your thinking. I per últim, voldria donar públicament les gràcies a l'Ajuntament de Barcelona i la Generalitat de Catalunya pel seu suport constant, a l'Ambra, patrocinador oficial de la WIC, i els socis mecenes, àngels i protectors del FAD, per estar sempre al nostre costat, inclús en els moments més difícils. Thank you, and we will meet virtually over the next few days. Thank you.
Doncs ara sí, moltes gràcies, Jordi. Merci, Jordi. Thank you very much. It's good to be reminded of this call to action, and it's true. It's now time to get to work. We've taken good notice of that. After Jordi, now it's time to take the stage for the Councillor for Tourism and Creative Industries of the Barcelona City Council, Xavier Mercè, who is right here with us. So, Xavier, we'll listen to you carefully. The stage is all yours. Tot teu.
Gracias, Ana. Good afternoon. Welcome, everyone, to this telematic inauguration. It's a pleasure for me to open this Barcelona Design Week in its 15th edition. The history of Barcelona is full of talent and innovation. In fact, Barcelona has been a reference city in the world of design, architecture, and cultural creation. We are in front of a structural reality, and therefore, design is a strategic element in the economic development policies of the city. Among all the events we hold around the creative industry, the Design Week stands out an important way. Firstly, because it brings together all the agents of the sector, and secondly, why it launches a message of vitality and urban and economic transformation. We are boosting the strategy and hope that this Barcelona Design Week will be a space to promote and make stronger design and creativity industry. This year, the Barcelona Design Week has a very clear goal: to bring design to the citizens and to mobilize the sector to share the vitality of Barcelona's design with the world. This year's motto is Design for Activism, which indicates a clear desire to interfere and dialogue with the health and economic crisis that affect us. El disseny és un factor clau per poder revertir la situació de crisi actual, una crisi triple: crisi sanitària, crisi econòmica, crisi social, també crisi política. I un exemple d'aquesta resiliència la trobem en l'exposició que ara es presenta en aquest museu, Emergència, dissenys contra la Covid-19. És un recull d'iniciatives que, a partir d'una clara referència en la crisi sanitària, ens expliquen de manera molt clara com el disseny pot intervindre, pot dialogar, pot interferir amb el món de la indústria, també amb el món dels missatges socials. Aquesta és una manifestació clara de la resposta ràpida que el sector ha donat a la crisi sanitària. Quan superem aquesta etapa, viurem en un món amb canvis profunds, de ben segur, i el sector del disseny ens ha de permetre reposicionar la ciutat en el nou context postpandèmia. No vull acabar aquesta intervenció sense expressar el meu agraïment als organitzadors de l'acte de la setmana, al FAT, al BCD, als patrocinadors, a tots els seus socis per l'esforç addicional que ha suposat organitzar-la en el context actual. És una mostra més de la resiliència d'aquestes organitzacions i una clara manifestació de la voluntat ferma de que el disseny i el que representa sigui, pel futur de la ciutat, una peça estructuralment imprescindible. Moltes gràcies, bona sort, bona feina.
Thank you very much, Xavier. We have to take also good note of this talent and innovation as a part of what Barcelona is. And I like the mention of this current exhibition right here at the heart of the Design Museum, where COVID and emergency put a lot of value on what design is or should be. We'll talk about it, I think, with Paola now, because basically now it's time to remind you that the motto of this year's edition of this Barcelona Design Week 2020 is design activism, in a way, let's say, to add value to the role of design in contemporary context. And indeed, our context is not the best of the possible ones. That is why we really think, and we're convinced that we couldn't have chosen today a better speaker for the opening tonight than Paola Antonelli, who I think is already listening to us from New York. Paola, hello, good night.
Hello.
Good night or good afternoon for you. It's, I think, almost midday in New York. How are you? How's everything going up there?
It's going well. The sun is shining. It's not that cold yet, and I can bike to work, so I'm happy.
Well, that's an optimistic spirit, all right. We're so glad to have you here. Thanks for this opening speech. We're looking forward to it. But first of all, maybe it's not necessary. Probably everyone here in the room, of course, and everyone watching from home know perfectly who you are. But I wanted to introduce you and to our audience as you deserve, okay? So just briefly, let me tell you who Paola Antonelli is and why it's so important that she's here tonight. Paola Antonelli is Senior Curator of Architecture and Design at the Museum of Modern Art since 1994. And she's the first ever Director of Research and Development since, I think, 2012. Her work, basically your work, Paola, investigates design and its impact on everyday experience, often including, and that's very important, including overlooked objects and overlooked practices, and always combining design with architecture, art, science, and technology. For instance, you were responsible for the introduction of video games in MoMA, not that long ago, although it seems like ages ago. And now you're currently working on the very interesting, I must say, series in Instagram, Design Emergency, which is devoted to the role of design precisely in the COVID-19 pandemic. I tried to summarize a little bit all your curriculum, but it's more or less the story.
Great done. Well, very well done, Anna. Thank you so much.
So, Paola, I think you're going to talk about a bit of this and that in your opening conference. And I have to say that after you speak, after your conference, for everyone who's watching from home, there'll be a time for questions that you can post in our chat in the channel on internet, right? So everyone can feel free to ask anything. And after all these questions posed, okay, we're going to pass them on to you, right? So first of all, we'll listen to you, say all you've got to say, it's all yours, and we'll talk later. Thank you, Paola.
Thank you so much, Anna. Well done. That's wonderful. And I want to thank you, and I want to thank Isabel and everybody that invited me to be with you today, and Jordi for the great, great introduction. And yes, it's true. It is a very interesting moment to be a designer. I love you all designers, and I love design. And this is the time for us to roll up our sleeves and get to work. It's a complicated moment because many of us have lost our jobs, and some of us have lost loved ones. I cannot imagine a tougher situation. And I have to say, I've been through quite a few in my career. I remember, for instance, 9/11, and I remember the crisis, the economic crisis in 2008 and several others. But this is really the perfect storm of economic destruction and health care problems of all sorts. It's really quite interesting. But going back to 9/11, what I want to say is that truly there is always a design emergency. And that's what I'm going to show you right now. I'm going to start showing you the fact that design emergencies indeed are what kind of guides us, right? So there's always a design emergency. When 9/11 happened, I was working on an exhibition that was entitled Emergency. It was an exhibition that was supposed to be about medical instruments, about triage centers, about ambulances, about the kind of design that is really for form follows function, that is like the old and purest idea of design. Then 9/11 happened, and I froze. I could not possibly talk about that kind of design when it was all around me, when people were being triaged, when so many had died. And so I just completely canceled the exhibition. I just put it on, not even on a shelf. I just forgot about it until a few months and a few years afterwards, I picked it up again. Why? Because indeed, there's always a design emergency, but we can look at it as designers from the other side, from the half full instead of the half empty glass. So all of a sudden, I called it Safe. It was an exhibition about design and safety. That goes to tell you that, as you know very well, design is much more than cute chairs. It's much more than posters. It's much more than cars. Design is everything around us, and it is science, of course. It is sociology, and it is more than anything, politics. And design touches every aspect of our life. So I'm going to talk to you about design and activism because everything that we do as designers, whether we are graphic designers or whether we are architects or in some cases communication designers, touches on politics. And politics is not about being part of one particular constituency, of being Democrat or Republican. Politics is about being citizens in the world, and designers are amazing citizens. So I would like to talk to you about a few examples of exhibitions and programs, not only mine, that might be interesting to you. In 2013, you might remember there was the announcement of the 3D printed gun. Cody Wilson, this kind of like libertarian activist in Texas, had found a way to put online files so that anybody with a good 3D printer could print at home their own lethal gun. And I remember that I was completely stunned by it. I was really surprised that something so good, technology, design, could become something so evil. And I remember that right away I thought, what can I do about it? How can I respond to this? And so together with another great design theoretician, Jamer Hunt, I started this project that was called Design and Violence. It was a project that was meant to investigate the aspects of violence in contemporary society by looking at design objects. So we proposed it to MoMA as an exhibition. MoMA turned it down. And so we started really making it as a WordPress site. You know, that's what you do when you have no money and you don't want to ask anybody's permission. You just go online. And so every other week, we would ask somebody really authoritative to write an essay about a particular design object, and then we would also introduce it curatorially. But then we also use the platform online to do something that people cannot normally do in exhibitions and galleries, to ask a question to the public. And that really that's when it became really interesting. So the design objects were very difficult, from the Toyota 4x4 that went from being an agricultural tool to becoming the guerrilla and narco traffickers car, to the prison in Norway where the man that killed 80 people on the island is kept, which looks almost like a hotel rather than a prison, to, for instance, the blue bra graffiti that were all over Cairo when the Arab Spring happened, that signified the woman that had been carried away from the police and that was completely veiled by the police by carrying her, revealed this blue bra. So all of these different objects have an incredible value when it comes to design as activism, when it comes to design as politics. Of course, in the case of the blue bra graffiti, the environment itself was incredibly political, but in other cases, the politics can be very subtle and not so much in your face. Still, it is activism. There's so many ways to be a design activist. Here is another screenshot from the website that you can still find, the Design and Violence website. And in particular, what I would like to show to you here is the $1 Million Block from Spatial Information Design Lab, which is a cohort of designers and architects and politicians at Columbia University. The $1 Million Blocks is a fabulous project that speaks about, unveils something that happens in the United States. In the United States, there are blocks, city blocks, in which the government, whether local or federal government, spends more than $1 million a year just to keep some of those inhabitants either in prison or in halfway houses. So it's almost like a measure of social entropy, right? It's the expense, the public expense, the taxpayers' money that goes into keeping people away from society instead of trying to reinsert them in society. And if you look at like a newspaper article, you can find out that there are more than 300 of these blocks in Brooklyn alone. But if you are reading the newspaper, this figure will come into your mind and will leave in 5 seconds. Instead, if you're looking at graphics, if you're looking at this blood red over the black map of Brooklyn, all of a sudden, it really becomes a shiver down your spine. It really becomes alive. And that's what design does. It really reveals the dark side or the underbelly of our society in some cases. Another example that is two more examples that are very subtle. One is the female genital mutilation poster, awareness campaign of female genital mutilation for Amnesty International by this Dutch company called Volontaire. And the other one is border wall as architecture. Two parts of the world that have different issues. One is the Middle East, and in particular it was Egypt and the practice of female genital mutilation. And the other is the border between Mexico and the United States, which has become really a heated zone these days. This is what two Mexican architects, Rael Sanfratello, did in 2014. You see the drawing there. It's the idea of transforming the border wall, the Trumpian dream of a barrier that really cuts America away from the rest of the world and protects it, into instead this element of interplay between cultures. In 2014, when we were doing Design and Violence, it was a drawing. In 2020, it is a reality. You see here children playing at the border between Texas and Mexico and getting together, coming together, no matter what Trump says. Design and Violence went on for about 2 years, and it ended on a note that was very important to us. It ended on the lethal injection. It's interesting because it gave us an opportunity to talk about design and suicide, design and racial justice, design and discrimination against immigrants. We wanted to talk also about the death penalty, which to us Europeans, to us citizens of the world, with very few exceptions, is an unacceptable moral choice. And so we chose as the last post the midazolam object. It was the midazolam medicine that is used in the, I get shivers down my spine even talking about it, in the lethal injection cocktail in the United States of America. And we had as the essay writer a man that had been for 30 years in death row in a prison in Texas. And then he was finally set free because a DNA test proved that he was completely innocent. So isn't it amazing that as curators, as designers, as design thinkers, and as citizens of the world, we can use design to highlight such experiences and such episodes of violence? What I am really thinking about design right now is its power, its potential. In a moment where we're all a little bit battered down, I think of what could be and what it could do. And that's what I believe that every exhibition and every acquisition in the collection should be about. Jordi mentioned and Anna mentioned that I was responsible for bringing video games inside MoMA, and it's true. And of course, MoMA is a museum where we have all sorts of objects of design, not that many. We're not the Victoria and Albert, we're not a gigantic encyclopedic museum. We have maybe about 6,000 objects. And we have video games like about 35, 36. And some of them are the classic. We have Pac-Man, we have Tetris, we have almost all the video games that you think should be in a collection. But we also have some other video games that are different in that instead of being pure entertainment, they are educational. They use our behavior to really generate empathy and understanding. For instance, This War of Mine by 11-Bit Studios is a first-person, you could call it a shooter game, but it's not. You are in a war game, but instead of being a soldier, you are a citizen. You're a citizen in Bosnia, and you have to fight for your life. War is raging around you, and you have to stay alive. Amazing, right? It's a completely different experience to have. And the same with Papers, Please by Lucas Pope. Papers, Please puts you in the shoes of an immigration officer at the border of the United States. You have to ask for papers. You have to make decision on whether to give asylum or not. And if you deny asylum, by the way, this was done before Trump, so you didn't have to separate children from their parents, thank God. But still, it was a harrowing way to experience being in the shoes of evil, or at least in the shoes of a dilemma. At that time, it was not that much evil anymore, yet it was more dilemma. So the responsibility as a curator and as a designer is that sometimes we have to make choices that are not about politics, and that's okay. But we have to remind ourselves that we are citizens, and therefore we are enmeshed in politics. And this is another series of acquisitions that we made yesterday. Yesterday, we acquired this object, this poster, the Brooklyn Liberation poster. It's actually not a poster because it was circulated in Instagram. But of course, you have heard about the Black Lives Matter movement that happened here in the United States and all over the world at the end of May as a reaction to the killing of George Floyd in particular, but there were many other killings that had happened in the year and in the years before that. Well, as a response or as an amplification of the Black Lives Matter movement, there's also a movement for Black trans lives. Transgender people are the victims of violence in the United States. There were 34 transgender or gender non-conforming people that were killed between the beginning of the year and June. And the great part of them were trans women of color, either Black or brown. So in June of 2020, there was this call for all trans activists and non-trans activists to gather in front of the Brooklyn Museum, all dressed in white, and have this beautiful protest and happening, an event, all masked and socially distanced, about Black trans lives. And Mohammed Fayaz is the designer of this poster that we have entered in the collection of MoMA yesterday, that goes to increase a collection of political graphics that has been going on for a long time. You see here, for instance, the Silence, Death, Act Up, AIDS Coalition to Unleash Power, the poster, and also Emory Douglas, who was the Minister of Culture of the Black Panthers, and his Black Panther newspaper that is also part of the MoMA collection. So you see, overtly political sometimes or subtly political in others. Another example of politics is what Jordi very generously mentioned, which is Broken Nature, where I, together with a great team of curators, together with Ala Tanir and Laura Mairan and Erica Petrillo, we advanced this idea of restorative design. So Broken Nature is an exhibition that happened as the 22nd Triennale di Milano in 2019. I mean, it's like last year, and it feels like it's been forever because of everything that happened this year. But it was an exhibition that was in Milan, which is my city, in the Triennale, which is the place, the building where I started my career as a little gopher, bringing water and tea to the curators in my 20s. And it's a magical building and a magical city where design is considered really important. And what you're looking at here is the cover of the catalog that says it all. It's a picture of a Swiss glacier. Every summer, in many glaciers in Switzerland, the authorities put some fabric to protect the glacier from erosion, from the rising temperatures on Earth. That's amazing. It's crazy. Have we gotten to the point that we have to cover up and shield nature from what we ourselves have done? That's what Broken Nature was about. Of course, that kind of statement is nothing new, but what we wanted to present was a new way, a new form of responsibility. For so many years, the idea of being responsible and sustainable has been a sort of self-punishment. In order to be responsible, you had to cut on your pleasure, on your sensuality, on your escapism, if you wish. Well, in a way, you had to be less human and less indulgent. And of course, a little bit of sacrifice is important, but not all of it, because in order for real sacrifices to happen, there needs to be a way to make them more attractive and more acceptable to everyone. It's not about a few righteous and heroic people doing something big. It's about billions of people doing the right thing. It's about what Bucky Fuller called the trim tab metaphor. I don't know how many of you, I had to look it up, but a trim tab is what is used in gigantic ships. They're like little directionals that help steer a gigantic ship in one direction. If all of us move in one direction, we can really make a difference. So Broken Nature was about talking about responsibility with some pleasure, at least. And you see here the entrance of the exhibition. It started out with a beautiful declaration of intents that is in the public domain. It's the Images of Change by NASA. NASA has a website that you can all see that shows the before and after, almost as if it were like a diet, right? The before and after of different parts of the world, before and after some either human-made or natural changes. And it can be an interval of a few months or an interval of thousands of years, but it shows that change is happening, and it's happening at a scale that is way bigger than humans, and humans are taking too much of a responsibility in this change. So this was the beginning of the exhibition to give you the tone, but then different forms of activism by designers were part of the show. And it was a huge show, so I'm not going to go through everything, just giving you some examples. Some activism can be really subtle. It can be almost imperceptible, like the pregnancy test that is biodegradable. So instead of another piece of plastic ending up in the landfill, it can be flushed, and it can be completely degraded biologically, and also for privacy, it's pretty good. Or the Ruby cup, instead of tampons and sanitary pads that are actually contributing to problems in the ocean and to the landfill, the Ruby cup is reusable many, many times. Or the heart attack poster by Karthik Dinakar together with Irina Kruglova as an illustrator that shows how there are different languages between male and female that lead to different diagnoses when so many women die of a heart attack because doctors and emergency operators do not understand that they're having a heart attack because they're explaining it, they're minimizing it, which is typical of women. Men have an elephant walking on their heart, and women have eaten something heavy, they've eaten too much tortilla for lunch. You know, it's really quite interesting, cold tortilla for lunch, and that's why I'm not having a heart attack. So you can be responsible in this subtle everyday way, or you can instead try to peel off layers and reveal something dark about our society by using beauty as a Trojan horse. I'm sure you're all familiar with Forma Fantasma, the two wonderful designers, Italian designers operating in the Netherlands. Well, Ore Streams is one of their works, and it's the real subject of the work is the dark system of electronic waste. Every time we throw away electronics, they end up in strange and dark places, especially in South Asia and in Africa, where they're very toxic, and they get recuperated by exploited labor. It's really like a dark underbelly. And since Forma Fantasma knows very well what it takes to attract attention, they made these gorgeous pieces of furniture out of discarded electronic waste to attract the attention. But then together with them, our interviews, our surveys, our investigations, and that's what I would like to talk about, this idea of investigative design, investigations about what's going on in the world, not in the world of design, but in the world, using design as a tool. So in Design and Violence, design was a lens to understand violence. In the work of Forma, Fantasma, and others, design is a tool to unveil some dark underbelly and hidden systems. Or even more openly, with the work of forensic oceanography and forensic architecture and design become the tools to really indict some wrong and right some wrongs. This is, for instance, the case of the Juventa. You might remember it was an NGO, a German NGO, that in 2018 rescued all of these migrants that were drowning coming from Libya. And there was accused, I think it was also my government, but it was like a coalition of governments accused them of being in cahoots with the traffickers, which was absolutely wrong. So forensic oceanography and forensic architecture, which is research groups that are based at Goldsmiths University in London, got together and used the tools of architecture. You can see here 3D modeling, all the sorts of studies. So it's it's science, it's geology, it's architecture, to make the case in front of the tribunal that it was not true, that Juventa, the boat, was not helping traffickers, but rather saving lives. So it's really fascinating. It's important to really understand how powerful design can be. Kate Crawford and Vladan Joler, in this incredible diagram, showed everything that is behind an Amazon Echo, both the software and the hardware, where the materials come from, where the ideas come from, where they go, the whole ecosystem that is as terrifying as one can imagine and as pervasive. So information conveyed in order to empower citizens is one of the most important powers that design has. In other cases, the political, the political weight and force of design goes into stimulating empathy. Today, everybody's talking about menstruations and periods in quite an open way. But once upon a time, it was a gigantic taboo. And I remember when I first saw Sputniko, who is this wonderful Japanese English artist and designer, and her menstruation machine. She had come up with this idea of a machine. You can see it there in this kind of chastity belt that she is wearing, that would enable men or other, trans women, everybody who would like to try and have the experience of a menstruation without having the physiology. It was a way to allow them to try it. So you would wear this belt that would have electrodes that would go down on your belly towards your groin that would give you electrical shocks. So you would feel the cramps. Then you would have a reservoir in the back, and you would have to draw your own blood and put it in the reservoir, and then it would be delivered in between your legs. And as always, as Hiromi, that's the actual name of Sputniko, as Hiromi usually does, she was born female, but she kind of interpreted this boy that wants to try being a woman for no reason than trying, and she just always makes like a video, a song, the object, some art, so it becomes a full-fledged experience. So this sort of speculative design activism, which is also the work of Thomas Thwaites, this is one of my favorite objects. It is political. More than an object, it's a performance, it's a whole adventure, and it is very political because it's about interspecies politics, and this is a new component to the whole game, right? It's not only about other human beings, it's about the whole world. It's about other species. And Thomas decided at some point that he had enough of the burdens of being a human. He wanted to try being a goat for 4 days. So he designed this contraption that allowed him to actually go to the mountains where the goats are and be with the goats for 4 days. He even had a way to eat the same grass that the goats would eat and digest it. He went full-fledged into trying to understand what it means to be a goat. And to me, the most beautiful thing of all is that the goats accepted him, and he became part of the herd for 4 days. Forma Fantasma, I was telling you, this is not only about what I do, my form of investigative curation and their form of investigative design is also shown in their exhibitions. At the Serpentine in London, they just closed an exhibition, or maybe it's still open, maybe just closed, but it was an exhibition called Cambio that was about the ecosystem of wood and lumber industry in the world, also complicated with lots of exploitation. Well, you know what's going on in the Amazons right now, but all over the world, there are endangered forests. There's an exploitation and a deforestation that is dangerous for the world at large. This exhibition was wonderful because once again, it used all the power of design and of scenography to explain to the world what is happening behind our table. You know, when we buy a table and we think everything is okay, or at least we think it's repurposed wood, and instead there's more behind it. So another gorgeous exhibition that tried to talk not only about design as decoration or design as pleasure, but design as an actual tool to understand what we do in society. Another form of activism is something that Neri Oxman does. Neri calls herself a design activist, even though she doesn't tend to be normally or openly political. This exhibition that just closed at MoMA talked about her material activism. In this case, her experiments with melanin. You know, melanin is the pigment that not only in humans, but throughout nature is so important for our survival. It protects us from the sun. It enables us to also use the sun and transform energy from the sun. And also, it's the pigment that is at the basis of so much social injustice and a whole world order that right now we're all trying desperately to subvert and to change. So while on the one hand, melanin could become an incredible architectural tool, can you imagine having facades that are infused with melanin and therefore protect us from the sun and modulate the transparency and translucency depending on the outside conditions? It could also become a way to have a new monument. And you're looking here at a picture of a speculative idea about a monument that is infused with melanin in Cape Town on Table Mountain, facing the island where Nelson Mandela was kept prisoner for so many years. So it's like a really strong way to talk about the skin color as a science and not as God-given right to have supremacy over all other beings on Earth. So politics that are almost accidental, and in this case, politics that are about restorative design. This is a picture from the MoMA show. It was fantastic. I'm so sorry that it was in the thick of the pandemic, so not too many people got to see it. But Neri is is trying to find a way to build with nature, not to build respecting nature only, that would be enough, but to build with nature so that everything that we build will be part of nature and of nature's systems. So what you're looking at here is a whole pavilion that is made by 17,000 silkworms. So it's really quite fantastic. And here I go to Design Emergency. Design Emergency is what brought me to the attention of Isabel and what got me invited. Well, also other things, I hope, but Design Emergency is a fantastic project that I started together with Alice Rosthorn. Alice, you probably know her, is the foremost design critic in the world and also my great friend. And she has this incredible Instagram feed that I'm sure you're all already following. So when we were at the beginning of the lockdown, not in the thick of the lockdown, around April, we were talking all the time, but we started talking about doing something about the pandemic to show the amazing reactions that so many designers had and the responses and the ideas, and also to try and sensitize the world at large to the amazing variety and diversity of design. So we started interviewing people, and we're still doing it every week. Some of them really famous, like Forma Fantasma, like, Kate Crawford, like, Ilse Crawford last week. Ilse Crawford. Oh my God, two the same names. Oh, duh, I hadn't even thought about it. So some very well known, other instead not very well known, like Sehat Kahani, who two female doctors in Pakistan that created a whole network of telemedicine that allowed them to bypass gender discrimination and create also a very contemporary and very efficient way to have medicine. So we've been doing that since May, and it's become really a wonderful outlet for our passion and a wonderful way to talk about design and its power. We started out, for instance, with Alyssa Eckert, who is the illustrator that did this illustration of the COVID-19 responsible virus, so the coronavirus. You can see at the bottom left what the virus really looks like. And it doesn't even look, because you cannot see that virus. You have to use an electron microscope that touches it. So we have no optics of it, but that's what it kind of looks like. And instead, the illustration that Alyssa and Dan Higgins, her colleague, made makes it into this kind of Hellraiser mean. Let me just make sure. I want to make sure it's not you. Yeah, no. I wanted to make sure there were no technical glitches. So this kind of mean ball, and the S proteins that are the ones that bind the virus to the cells are made red and really mean looking. So there's a communication design impact to it. So science is also translated by visuals in this particular case. We started with her, and then we went on to discuss many different aspects. You see here the New Zealand campaign to make people aware of how to behave during the pandemic, which we considered the best designed campaign amongst all the national and local ones, or also the harrowing cover of the New York Times, first page on the New York Times, with the near 100,000 deaths in the United States, where all the names of the people that died were printed on the first front page of the New York Times and beyond. I mean, these are examples of design that really make you wonder who has more power in the world but designers, right? Then at some point also, Alice and I were doing double acts, and we would talk about different aspects in the pandemic, like symbolism, for instance, the Italian housewives coming out on the balcony at 6 p.m. every night and greeting all of the frontline workers, or the little girl losing a piñata with the COVID in the United States, or New Delhi all of a sudden without pollution, and that happened all over the world. It was very good for the environment. The pandemic, not very good for us, but good for the environment. And this is what happens, I mean, we're talking about very serious subjects, even though you see us laughing our heart out. But that's on the left-hand side, Alice and myself, and then Alice and Hilary Cottam, and Alice and Alyssa Eckert. So every week we have something else. Sometimes the designers are not even designers, they're accidental designers. This is Marco Ranieri, who is an anesthesiologist, a doctor in Bologna, who is one of the people in the world that invented the split ventilator. As you know, at some point there was a shortage of ventilators, so there were some doctors that tried to split it, and it's not easy. It's not about just splitting the tubes. You also have to really work on the software and find ways to have patients that have a similar need for ventilation, so it's very complex. And also, we wanted to highlight what was going on really in the world, and the frontline workers wearing PPE that was not adapted and that was not comfortable, even though they had to really go through hell for like 12 hours at a time. So we wanted to show the good and the bad, the high and the low, the direct and the indirect. Federica Fragapane did visualizations of the vulnerability of different communities in the United States and in Africa to COVID-19. And so it was really interesting also from that viewpoint. And then at some point, Wallpaper magazine asked Alice and I to actually guest edit the October issue, which we did. And you see the cover. The cover carries the logo that was designed by the amazing Frith Kerr that is just below. Frith is a friend. And when Alice and I decided to go ahead and do Design Emergency, we just called her up and we said, we need a logo. And she came up with this logo that conveys both elegance and gravity and a sense of centeredness, but also emergency. She came up like this in a few days. And so she designed the whole wallpaper section and the cover. Alice and I, and also other people, were photographed by a very, very, very famous portrait photographer, Brigitte Lacombe. Unfortunately, we had to do it through Zoom with like a selfie. So basically, you would have Brigitte on Zoom telling you how to hold the phone. It's just completely crazy, but super interesting. And then inside, we had many different other sections. We keep going, we keep going, and now we're trying to talk about the world after the pandemic. Alice interviewed S. Devlin. I interviewed Kate Crawford about AI, Peter Barber about housing. And we also had some specials because there's always a design emergency. And it's not only the pandemic, there's also the Beirut blast. And we have these specials, the Beirut blast. It was two designers from Beirut interviewing each other. Black Lives Matter. It was Zoe Whitley, who's the director of the Chisenhale Gallery in London, interviewing Titus Kaffar, who is an artist that did a few covers for Time magazine. We had a design emergency about the US elections and a design emergency about the West Coast fires in the United States. And we'll keep going. So there really is always a design emergency. And there was a design emergency also in the past. And it's important to be activists. And I wanted to get towards closing by celebrating three activists, three Italian designers that we all miss. One that died a few years ago, and two that just died. I would like to start with Enzo Mari. Enzo Mari, there's a beautiful exhibition right now at the Triennale. Enzo Mari was the activist, was the curmudgeon, was the grumpy designer in Italy. He was always active, always activist. And I'm showing him here with one of his projects called Autoprogettazione from 1974, with which he would show people how to make their own furniture. Everybody's a designer. Let's bypass companies and corporations and let's give the power of design to the people. On the left-hand side, Alessandro Mendini and his Lassù chair in 1974, pretty strong act, burning down chairs, burning down the whole idea of design. And then a subtler but not less powerful act, Cini Boeri, the wonderful woman designer, architect that died also just a few months ago, and her Serpentoni, the idea of selling couches by the yard, by the meter, letting people buy as much as they needed, made of polyurethane foam, completely easy to deploy and available to all. And you might notice that all of these designers all of these projects are from the 70s, a period that is very much like today, including the deep crisis in which we are right now. In the 70s, we touched some of our lowest lows. I hope that we will be able to come out of them with as much power. And I would like to end by saying, I am touched by the fact that the EU declared a new Bauhaus, the era of the new Bauhaus. But I really do hope that it will be a better Bauhaus, that it will be more diverse, that it will also take into account what young people are telling us, that it will take into account all races, that it will take into account indigenous people, that will take into account colonization, that it will take into account biodiversity and everything that we have learned in the century that went between the Bauhaus and today. And I want to close with this slide that I love. The kids from Fridays for the Future, from the Greta Thunberg started movement, used to gather at the Triennale in Broken Nature. They used to gather there and then start their protest. This is possibly what made me happiest in my career, the idea that an exhibition of design that I curated for citizens to try and help us all be like trim tabs and change course really had its effect and was embraced by the people that care the most about our future. I really hope that you all will strive for the same goal, to make these people feel that they can build upon what we have given them. And right now, I would like to go back to being myself and to accepting your questions. And I thank you very much.
Paola, thank you very much. Really, thank you for this enlightening conference. It's been a pleasure listening to you. Everyone here was just like, wow. And I'm sure from home, everyone was really interested. I think they were really brilliant and accurate and I'd say compelling examples of this emergency design. So I'm going to pose you like 3-4 questions before the closing of the act by Jaume Colloni. And the first one is, in fact, it's congratulations for your just very, very recent acquisitions, like yesterday, you said, or the day before yesterday, so that's really new. I think they're really outstanding, and in fact, that makes me think about how, if you think, or if you would agree with me somehow, that design reacts to reality sometimes before institutions or laws do.
Of course. Of course, designers are there in the trenches, they react right away. There are some institutions are big and they're like pachyderms, they're elephants. I really commend my colleagues at the V&A. I think it was Kieran Long a few years ago that started the rapid response collecting. But otherwise, unless you create a pocket, it's impossible to go through the bureaucracy. And maybe it's okay, in the sense that there's a scrutiny that you go through. The Brooklyn Liberation poster happened really fast. So we tried to really imitate our friends at the V&A.
According to one of your posts in the Design Emergency Instagram account, which I dearly recommend everyone to follow, designers, you said, are often not invited into processes. For example, you were mentioning the elections as an example, the US elections. And you believe that systems would be so much better if designers were brought in more and more. What can be done about it? Do you have any hope in the future that this happens eventually?
Oh yeah, I do. I think a lot can be done, but once again, it's not like one declaration of intent, it's many. It's about reforming schools, like starting from junior schools, starting to teach design as a viable career from the beginning. It's about educating politicians. I'm really happy that the EU has noticed design. But I want to make sure that they understand the depth of it and the diversity of it. So I think it's education, education, education. It's up to us designers to find a way to communicate, to write better, to be more engaging, to be more effective, and really change the whole system so that design has a presence.
You've always said, Paola, that better design is for a better life. If you look at the past 20 years, what would the objects of our everyday life tell about us as a society?
Well, we changed so much. I mean, just the way we deal with materials has changed so much, and it makes me really happy. I mean, the ban, the plastic bag ban, the single-use plastic bag ban, for me, is one of the biggest achievements. So it's the objects that we don't use anymore that are important, right? It's what we have been able to do without, what we have understood is wrong, that to me matters the most.
There is always a design emergency, as you said, Paola, and we could say now that we are facing two global crises. One is this COVID-19, and the other probably, as you just mentioned in your last reference in the speech, is the climate crisis. Would you say that ecological issues are more and more present in contemporary design, and there will be more and more every time?
I wish we could say that it's only two crises, because then we have also. Yeah, sure. No. I'm not correcting you. I'm making the point that climate, health, racial justice, and the crisis of democracy, they're all linked. That's the biggest thing to understand as designers, is that systems are interrelated, and there's really a connection between what happens in politics and the crisis of democracy and the health crisis. So I would say that when designers will embrace complexity and understand that they cannot change everything at the same time, but they can do acupuncture in a very effective way. I think that one understand more how to be effective. But I would say that designers are becoming more and more political, or at least they are not afraid to show that they are political, and that fills me with happiness.
And they are citizens, as you said, and which is this personalist political thing, which is wonderful. I've got this final questions now. This is a personal one, and I just heard you say that when you were 24, Paola, you found out that you were more comfortable with objects than with people, which made me, which I thought was very funny. Is that still so in times of social distancing, or has something changed along the way?
Well, no, the funny thing is that I am super comfortable with many people, like speaking right now to your 700 or being in the subway in New York. I'm afraid of close contact with people. I'm afraid of getting to know people. So I am, right now in social distancing, I miss so much being in the middle of New Yorkers when people start talking to you and don't leave you alone. But I'm okay when it comes to being one-on-one. I'm damn shy.
Sorry, I just found it so funny when you said it in one of your TED Talks. And just there's a final question that is getting to me and posing to you. We'll finish up with this.
Yes.
The question here is if you know if there are any examples of designers working in government councils, in this period of crisis, many crises, as you well pointed out, to be solved. Do you know of any designer who is just involved in somehow resolving crisis?
Well, not resolving crisis. They're involved in teams that try to deal with crisis. There are people working at the UN. There are people working at the Danish government, for instance. There are people, UK Gov, the new website. Well, it's not new anymore, but the website of the UK government was also. So there are many, many, many. But it's not normal. Like in the United States right now, I think 0, for instance. In Italy, I don't think there's any, even though it's Italy. So it's something that should become normal. You know what I'm saying? And instead, it's still some cases that we can research.
Well, Paola, thank you very much indeed for your words today. I think it's time we say goodbye, and we wanted really to tell you this activism, this really way of looking at design and all this long life career of putting and giving value to design is really appreciated here. So thank you very much, Paola Antonelli.
Thank you for saying that. Thank you very much, Anna.
I'd ask for an applause here in the room, but there's a few people here in the room, and I would like for an applause from everyone. It's really been a pleasure having you here.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Isabel.
Ciao, stammi bene. Ciao, Paola.
I
acabem, anem una mica de retard del temps previst, però tot està ja més o menys controlat i, per tant, per acabar aquesta sessió d'avui. Sorry, I was just shifting to Catalan now because there's some people applauding here, so I just talked to them in Catalan, but I'll shift into English again. It's for everyone who's watching from home. We're just closing this event right now, and the person who's going to say the final words is the first Deputy Mayor, Jaume Collboni, who takes the stage right now.
Okay.
Endavant.
Bona tarda, buenas tardes, good evening, everyone. First of all, a special thanks to Paola. Thanks for your brilliant and inspiring speech. I think, well, I keep a sentence. I think we have to remember there is design in every emergency. It's very deep. On the other hand, special greetings to the World's Design Week's organization, which is hosted here in Barcelona, in fact here in Design Hub. Thank you for being here and for your confidence in us. And good evening, everyone. It's my great pleasure to inaugurate this Barcelona Design Week. Barcelona is a synonym of talent and innovation. We're the city of design. Design is a structural value of Barcelona, not an added value. It is a characteristic of our urban DNA. Si una cosa tenim clara a la ciutat de Barcelona és que no hi ha cap tipus de normalitat, ni vella ni nova, que s'entengui sense les indústries creatives, incloent-hi el disseny, que és un motor econòmic clau per la ciutat, pels barcelonins i per les barcelonines, i també per la seva regió metropolitana. De fet, és una prioritat d'aquest mandat del govern municipal impulsar aquest àmbit. En este sector de las industrias creativas se constata que es uno de los que ha resistido mejor el embate de la crisis del COVID. De hecho, las industrias creativas, junto con el sector tecnológico, es el único que ha creado empleo y ha resistido la crisis. Y como sabéis, desde hace ya un par de años, el sector de la industria creativa y del diseño y de la tecnología en el área metropolitana de Barcelona ya genera más riqueza, más PIB que el sector industrial. Design is one of the main engines of our economy. It makes us special and competitive in a globalized world. Design is also key to overcome the current economy and health crisis. That's why this year's claim is Design for Activism. Es una crida, es un llamamiento a la movilización de todos los sectores de la creación i de les indústries creatives. És un esdeveniment per tota la ciutat aquesta setmana, també per projectar-nos internacionalment. En definitiva, és una crida a la mobilització del sector per fer front a aquesta crisi, a aquest repte col·lectiu, des del món del disseny, des de les indústries creatives, a través de l'activisme. Tenim una prova aquí amb la mostra que d'una forma tan excel·lent fa el Museu del Disseny de la ciutat i que està oberta a tots els ciutadans. Welcome you all to the Barcelona Design Week. Welcome. Bienvenidos, benvinguts. Esperemos que el año que viene nos podamos abrazar físicamente todos y todas. Bienvenidos.
Gràcies, Jaume. Em quedo amb aquest desig que l'any que ve puguem tenir una cosa més càlida and we can, as Jaume said, we can hug each other and touch each other and kiss each other and have a toast for this opening of the Barcelona Design Week. It's time to say goodbye. Gràcies, Luis, Jordi, Xavier, Jaume. Gràcies, Míriam, Isabel, Míriam, Oleguer. Thanks, everyone here, for making this possible tonight. Thanks, everyone, for being home today, sharing the knowledge. Let me remind you just that Barcelona Design Week 2020 will be held from today, starting today, until the 26th, both online and on-site. And I'll tell you to check out the more or less 80 events that you can find online from all over the world. I'll finish with a quote by a young designer who's named Melinda Mamo. She says, "Every great design begins with an even better story." So keep it up, designers of the world. The story of our times is in your hands. Thank you very much. Good night. Gràcies a tothom. Bona nit.